All right, I think we're live. Just make sure, check last minute things here. Recording. Can you hear me? I think, yes. Yeah. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another terrible JavaScript game dev stream. Yes, we were working on my game TraceRacer. You see it before you on screen. We added some nice animation in yesterday, in yesterday's stream. We basically, well, it's not quite finished yet. We're working on it. That's what we're doing today. We're fixing it. So we've now every time if I stop, I have to fix. Sorry if you hear some pounding. That's my wife working on the painting the trim upstairs. And now that I say that, I don't know why I hear banging when she's painting. But we can just ignore that for now. So yesterday we added in this animation that kind of nicely displays our target bubbles. So as we're playing, we see the bubbles, kind of our next bubbles we're supposed to pop, kind of cycle through, which is really nice. So the way we had it working, like in the previous stream, is there was no animation. It was just these like 3 little bubbles here, and then the colors would just instantly change. And that wasn't very visually appealing. Hang on a second here. Okay. All right, I thought I would note too that I've got some Streamlabs stuff set up now, so we should be able to see like the recent follower over there. And that, in theory, the chat should be popping up here too. So once we get somebody throwing something in the chat, we should see it there. We'll see how it looks. I don't know. I couldn't really like preview the chat as far as I know what the chat would look like, so I just put the chat box there. So we'll see how that looks. Yes. So anyway, as we were saying, we now have some nice little animation working, kind of just cycling through. From a gameplay perspective, it's actually really nice. It's a lot better than the way it was before, where it was just instantly changing color. Now having like something like sliding by feels really good. Your eyes just kind of, you see it better. So there's kind of it's easier for you to keep track of what colors you're supposed to be hitting. Because the idea is, you're keeping your focus here while you're playing, right? And kind of out of your peripheral vision, you're kind of looking at this. So we have the animation working going forward, but the part we need to fix right now is the animation back. So when you go forward, it just, advances one bubble forward, right? But when you go back, you could theoretically go back a few bubbles, because you're going to go back to the beginning of whatever your current checkpoint is. So right now I have it configured so that once you pop 4 bubbles, you go to the next checkpoint. So potentially, if you screw up on the last bubble, this would go back 3 bubbles. Now I started, yeah, in our, so basically we've got a method now. We've got a method on our progress meter here that basically gets called from our main game object, our marathon, which I'm just calling marathon right now. So we have our marathon game object, which keeps track of every time a bubble gets popped. So when a bubble gets popped, it checks if it's the correct bubble. If it's the correct bubble, or even if it's not the correct bubble, it calls a method now in our progress meter to let the progress meter know what the latest update should be. And basically all it's passing now, what we modified yesterday on yesterday's stream, was basically it just passes the ID of the bubble that you should now be on, the next target bubble, right? So if we start from the beginning here, our first target bubble is bubble 0, which is this orange one. So then as we play, you know, now our target bubble is, this would be bubble 2, the purple. But if I let go, we go back and bubble 0 would now be our orange, or bubble 0 would be our target bubble again, but this obviously is not updating to reflect it. But just to make sure that everything with that is working, we can, oops, we can print the ID in the console. So we can see, I know it's kind of small there, but you can see as I pop bubbles, we were on 0, now we're at 1. So if I pop 1, we go to 2. So that's the ID that's getting passed into our set target bubble ID method in our progress meter. So that's great. Excuse me. So what I've done now is with that ID that comes in, so we basically passes in the ID. It's all well and good. And then the progress meter itself is also keeping track of the last target bubble ID. Oh, I'm getting a call. I got to take this here. All right, sorry, I'm back now. Okay, so as I was saying, our progress meter keeps track of its own, it keeps track of the target bubble ID itself. So that will end up getting set at the very end of this method. So the ID that gets passed from the marathon object will get set right at the end there. But basically what that lets us do is it lets us know like where we were prior, our state prior, so we can either go advance to some other thing or go back. So I created this variable called diff, which basically takes the new ID and then just subtracts the target, the previous, which would have been the previous target bubble ID. So this ID is the new target bubble ID, and this would have been the previous one, right? So then diff, oops. I don't know what I did. Is everything still going? Yes? Okay. I hit spacebar on some other window here. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. So now I'm going to print diff to the console. So that should be anytime we pop a bubble and it's the correct bubble, that'll always be diff should be 1 because we're always just advancing forward to the next bubble. Because that'll be the new ID coming in will be the next ID, and our previous ID will be 1 minus that. Because our IDs just go up in order, right? So you start with bubble 0. After that, you got to pop bubble 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our diff, when we pop the correct bubble, is always going to be 1 in this case. And then if we mess up, it's going to be some sort of negative number. It's going to be whatever bubble you were on minus whatever the checkpoint ID is. So if we do, these two green ones are hard to see. Okay, so we advance 1 now. And let's advance 2. So then if I release the cursor, now we go -2. Sorry, it might be kind of hard to see that. Whoops, okay. So if we pop 1, release the cursor, we go back -1, right? So that needs to signal that these bubbles here need to either slide, you know, some sort of -1 spaces or -2 spaces or -3. In this case, where the checkpoints are 4, it's 4 bubbles to get to the next checkpoint. So if I pop all 4 of these, this, and then this, I would go to the next checkpoint. But if we just pop these 2 and then, or these 3 and then mess up, now if I pop this one, I'd go to the next checkpoint. But if I screw up, worst case, at the most extreme will be -3. So anytime we mess up, in the case of 4 bubbles being a checkpoint, it'll be -3, anywhere from -1 to -3. You know, if we had 5 bubbles as a checkpoint, then it would be like -4 to -1 in that range. So I need to figure out exactly how we want to do. Okay, so, well, I already set up this little if statement here. So basically, if diff is 1, that means we've advanced 1 bubble forward, right? So the bubbles need to slide up, basically. So this bubble would slide up and fade out. These 2 bubbles would slide up and grow into the next 2 positions, and then an invisible bubble here would fade in and slide into this bottom slot here. But if we go negative, we've got a couple different scenarios here. We've got, you know, it could be -1, it could be -2, it could be -3. So the way I have it happen right now is all of the bubbles that go off just fade up here to this one spot, and their sizes don't change either. So we need to figure out how we're going to loop, and then we're going to loop for whatever. Yeah, it's going to have to be for however many, whatever our negative number is here. We're going to have to loop that many times, I guess. Well, okay. So if we go -1, so if that would be the case of we drag over 1 bubble, we pop it, and then we release the cursor. So yellow should slide back. You know what? We're gonna have to fire up the drawing tablet again. Okay. So we've got brush maybe. Okay. So we've got our big bubble. We've got our next big one and then our small one. So when we start, this is bubble 0, bubble 1, and bubble 2. And if we pop bubble 0, so then bubble 1 would be here, right? Bubble 1, then bubble 2, and then bubble 3 would be the small one. And bubble 0 would go up into this invisible space here. It would slide up and become invisible. So that's if we pop one, right? So that's where diff equals 1. So then if we go to the next, we'll advance again and we'll say diff equals -1. We'll just do kind of the, so we messed up, the player messed up. So now we need to go back down to like this state here. So 0 yeah, for each basically we would go as many bubbles as we've slid up here. We'll need to go back and slide each of those. Well, so yeah, let's keep this up for right now. But we'll go back to the code here. Okay, so if diff is less than 0, this would be the case where we need to slide back. So as we go forward, yeah, I guess we'll take let's const we'll do math.abs diff. Okay. So I'd like to just turn diff into a positive number here, because diff will be diff will be negative if we're inside this loop here. So doing math.abs, we'll convert that to a positive number. So we'll have it count will be how many times we need to iterate to slide bubbles out of the top space. Right. So that will be, okay. So however long it count is, so we'd have 4, let I equals 0, I is less than it count. I like to do plus equals 1. So in the case of -1, so this would be like undo invisible bubbles. So we would need to slide bubbles off of, well, let's see what basically the previous you know what? Actually, this is going to be somewhat simpler than I'm kind of thinking here, or than it seems. So, excuse me. So, we're getting the new ID, right? So that's whatever the new ID that comes in here. Set target bubble ID. That's what's coming in from the marathon object, right? So that's the one that says, okay, here's the new bubble that's going to be the target, right? And it'll always, in the case of when the player messes up, that ID will always be some bubble that is currently hidden off in this space here. So if it's -1, then it's just simply this, you know, in the case, in our just little example here, bubble 0 got popped, so it becomes invisible. Bubble 1 is the new target. But in the case of diff -1, the ID would now be 0 is what would be getting passed from the marathon. So 0 would now have to slide into this 0 position. So basically, we would just need to go back from yeah, I don't think we wouldn't need to do any like calculation here. Let's just get a basic. Okay, so I don't know if I'll need this right now. Let's do, so the new ID would be 0, let's say, for our example. So the target bubble let's see here. Okay. So the target coming in would be 0. The target ID coming in would be 0. So we need to just simply take the bubble at that index of ID 0 and set it to whatever would have been this .target index. So in our example, ID equals 0. This .target bubble ID would equal 1 in our example here. So all I need to do is animate. So basically this bubble's invisible, so its alpha is set to 0. So it needs to be moved, and its alpha. So we have the 3 types of animations that we apply to the progress bubbles. We've got the size change. So we created the 3 methods yesterday for these marathon progress bubbles. We've got move anim, fade anim, size anim. Move anim just moves the bubble from some position, or moves it along the y-axis, the y value only. The fade anim controls the alpha, and the size anim controls the radius. We'll animate from whatever the radius is. So then whenever you call move to, you pass a y value. Whenever you say fade to, you pass the new alpha value that it should be faded to. And whenever you do size to, you pass the new radius value that it should be. And it will animate, you know, between those values. So basically then we have, in our example, ID, where ID equals 0, this dot target bubble ID is 1. So we just need to animate this bubble to whatever this current bubble is. So we would just do this dot target bubbles ID. So we're just going to do a move. So we're going to do a move to, and we're going to do a move and a fade. We need to fade back in. Target bubbles ID dot fade to, and then that one is going to easily just be 1 because we just need to animate. Our alpha will have been 0 at this point for the hidden bubble, and we need to fade it back to 1. So this dot target bubbles ID move to, and this just needs to move to the Y position of this dot target bubble ID. So this dot target bubble ID. Oh, sorry. This dot target bubbles. This dot target bubble ID dot size dot, or sorry, this would be dot pose dot Y. Okay, so that. So if we screw up now, if I release the mouse, we should see the gray one fly back in over the top of green. Actually, I don't know if it'll go over the top of green. It'll probably go underneath. But we should see it come back. There we go. Okay, so it came back on top. Nice. Now, so I think we will need to do that loop now, because we'll need to loop for all the invisible ones, because in the case of diff being -1, we only would loop once. So I think what we had here is good. So now let me make sure this, yes. So what we need to do is, this would be ID plus I, because it'll start at 0. ID plus I. And this will be target bubble ID plus I. Okay, so this will take care of the invisible bubbles. So if we do orange, let go, orange comes back, right? So if we do green, whatever that color was, we let go, those two come back. Oh, yes, and then yeah, I'm just going to do a radius. I'm just going to do a this dot target bubbles ID plus I. We're also going to do a size 2. And it's going to also be this bubble dot size dot R. Okay. So that way we can animate the radius as well. So now we should see that. Then we let go. Boom. So those ones come back. Right? Perfect. Okay, and all 3 come back there. Now we also need to fade out the current ones, right? So all of these would need to fade back as well, or slide out. Yeah, okay, now that's all screwed up. So that should work fine for our invisible bubbles that have been already popped. that have been already popped. But for the bubbles that haven't been popped, those ones now need to fade back to this space down here. Each one of them would need to slide. They'd each need to slide down to their consecutive positions, or to whatever position they should be in. So this guy would need to slide down 1. But what I think we're going to do is, like, if we messed up just 1, it would just slide down 1. So if our it count, we would also, let's just do 4, let I equal 0. This would be just another iteration. Actually, we might even be able to just do, we can just do this one loop, I think. Well, let's just leave this separate for right now. I is less than it count, I plus equals 1. Okay. So here we are going to just simply do this dot target bubbles, this dot target bubble ID plus I. So this is kind of the same thing, except it's going to be a little different. No, actually, no, this would just be, let's just say B equals target ID equals I. And then we'll also say const next B equals B plus 1. Okay. So yeah, then we're simply just doing the same. We can just do the same thing. Move to, fade to, size to for each of these. So yes, let's do the multi-cursor there. B, and then we are going to do, well, this dot target bubbles. We'll just do it. It should just be the next one for all of these. Yes. And this would be, whoops. Oh, there we go. That's good. And this would be color dot A. Yes. Kitty, wow, looks great. Hello. Thank you. Yeah, I don't see my chat box isn't showing up. Maybe it's, let me see if I can get that working quick here. Visual settings, background color. Well, I don't know. Chat box doesn't seem to be working here on the. Chat box does not seem to be working. So whatever. I'll figure that out at some other point here. So okay, I think what we just did here should now. Oh. I just noticed something bad there. Oh, no. That's right. Okay. Okay, so now, in theory, nice. Okay, nope, that's wrong. All right, so something. Let's just try this again. I want to just observe. Okay, so if we do one. Oh. Yes, I can't do it count. It needs to be config, because in case of any mess up, all three bubbles are always going to slide. You know, because if you advance one bubble, we pop one bubble. Well, now it's messed up here, but we pop one bubble. But if I mess up, all three of these bubbles have to slide back positions, right? So config.marathon.progress meter bubble count. Okay, so now there we go, except oh yeah, that's right, those other ones are getting all that one. They're flying off. Oh, that's a big problem there, isn't it? All right. I don't know. I'm coming up with another thought for this, another idea. But I'm going to use the bathroom quick, and then we'll be back. Oh, I don't need to do that. We can just zoom. There we go. Nice. Okay. All right. BRB. All right, I'm back. So my one thought here is now, instead of well, actually, let me just do the fix for this. A simple fix, because right now we've got bubbles that just fly out up here to 0, which they're going to y is 0. Something else isn't quite working right. Yeah, and the animation is getting screwed up there. So, hang on, let's see. We've got pink. Let's see, pink, brown, let go. And then brown comes back, but brown's all like messed up now. Like it's like animating too fast or something. Let's just slow these animations down so we can get a little bit of a better idea of what's going on as well. Let's make these, sure, 3 seconds. We'll do that. 10 times slower. Okay. Awesome. So now if I mess up, yeah, that one fades to 0, which is, I will fix that in a minute, but I want to also see why does it move too fast there? Well, let's just see if I can fix this other issue. So the other problem is with our marathon creator, we have we would like, well, okay, let's see what we've got here. So the problem is that I am putting all, so for each progress meter bubble, we set the y to 0 to start for all of them. And then for the first 3, that would go here, then we set them individually with their sizes, their appropriate sizes and everything. Sorry, deep in thought here. If we do 2 of them and we let go, that looks good. Those 2 look good. 1 second is too, or 3 seconds is too long. Let's shrink these a little bit. 2 seconds. That should be good. Okay, so we pop 2. Great. Let go. Those 2 come back. That looks pretty good, I think. I think that's fine. So man, we've already been going 45 minutes. That really doesn't matter what I just changed there, but whatever. Okay. All right. I have a new idea, because this seems to be going. Seems to be getting a little crazier than I would like. What I'm going to do now is actually just calculate like some constant properties. So what I think I will do is like I'll have like a I'm going to have like a little array that takes I'm going to have an array that stores like each bubble slot's properties, right? So like its alpha value, its radius size, its and the position, the y position, right? Those are the 3 things we really care about in the case of our progress meter here. How big the bubble is, whether or not you can see it. So I'm also going to have a little, so basically we'd end up with a 3 bubble system here. We'd end up with a position for this guy, which we'll call that like the hidden I gotta practice with my drawing tablet here. All right, so we'll call this one like hidden, popped hidden. We'll have like a bubble props. Yeah, it'll be like bubble props array or bubble props object, right? So that'll be our bubble props. And this will be like hidden, hidden popped. Then these would be visible. This would be like an array of the visible bubbles from there to there. Oops. And then we would have like a little guy down here that would be hidden unpopped, I guess. Pooped. Should just call it that. So then, and then basically each of these would be the radius, the opacity, the alpha, and the y position, right? And then those would stay the same. They're always going to be the same. And then what we'll do is we will animate we will simply animate whatever bubbles to these constant positions, right? So we'll kind of have like the step for each of the way. We need to do something with the hidden popped bubble or bubbles, something with the visible ones, and something with the hidden unpopped things, right? Either these are sliding up this way, everything's going up this direction, or everything's going downwards this direction. Okay. I think that sounds pretty good. So what I want to do then first is actually in our marathon creator, so this is where we set all of that up. We're actually going to create that. We will create that object first. So actually, let's do generate progress meter, and then I'm going to have a const bubble props, and that's going to equal an object, and then we will have hidden, what did we say? Hidden popped. It's going to equal an object. Visible is going to equal an array, and hidden unpopped is also going to equal an object. Okay. So then at this point we calculate out the positions of everything. Or this first array we do just here we do just setting up, we do just instantiation of all the bubbles. And this part would stay the same. Yeah, so actually I might just move this down. Oh boy, okay, there we go. Yes. So this gets moved down because now we have, okay, so we have one loop to calculate the positions of each bubble. So we should also let's see. Okay, so these are the visible. These would be all the visible bubbles, right? So what we can do is say we can do bubble props dot visible dot push, and then we're going to push a new object that will be R, just be R. Y is going to equal prog bubble Y pix. Oops, prog bubble Y pix. And alpha will be 1. A will be 1. Okay. Yes, so far so good. Okay, so these are our visible bubble properties. And then we want to specify the unpopped. So the hidden unpopped, bubble props.hidden unpopped would actually just equal like the same things. Yes, so R would equal R, Y would equal prog bubble Y pix, and alpha would equal 0, because these are the hidden ones, right? So these are the hidden unpopped bubbles. So this should be the property of every bubble that's technically down here and hidden, right? One of these ones, hidden unpopped. And hidden popped would be bubble props dot hidden popped is going to equal R of bubble props dot visible 0 dot size dot R so it's going to be the same radius. The invisible ones that are up here that have been popped will stay the same radius. Basically, all they do is just move up a Y position and then go invisible, fully transparent. So that would be the Y position is going to be 2 times the radius of that bubble plus, I do that up here, yeah. 2 times the radius of that bubble, of the 0 bubble, plus the Y between value, which is this. So it would be bubble props dot visible. Oh wait, yeah. Dot size dot R. So it would be, we'll do 2 times. Let's actually spread these out now since it's just getting kind of hard to read. Okay. And then gotta put a comma. Can't forget the comma. Alpha. Okay, this is also hidden, so hidden as an alpha of 0. All right, so, oh, wait. This has to be plus the prog bubble Y between picks. Okay. So I don't know why I brought this up because this isn't going to do anything. Uncaught cannot read property R of undefined. Marathon creator JS 145. I probably did a bubble props dot visible 0. Bubble props dot visible. CLG bubble props. So for some reason our bubble props is not visible. Yeah, look at that. That should be right. Oh, we don't have. Oh, okay. There is no size thing anymore. Right. Yeah, I just have an array of the visible is just an array of objects that have a simple R, Y, or A property. Radius, Y position, or alpha. Okay, so yeah, stuff works there now. All right, so we don't actually use this yet, but we should pass in bubble props to our progress meter. Just pass it in on the end here for right now. In progress meter, we'll have this dot bubble props equals bubble props. So bubble props goes in on the end here. Okay. So let's stop over props. Okay. So now let's try using let's just set it for right now to hey, Juna Tolvanen. Juna Tolvanen. Thanks for the follow. Sorry, I messed that name up, I'm sure. Hello. So oh, I was going to check my new recent follow ticker there, and that works. That scaled nicely. It's Finnish name. It's hard. I know it's Juna Toivainen. Oh, sorry. My eyes are bad. It looked like an L. Juna Toivainen. Gotcha. Well, welcome to the stream. I appreciate you checking me out. So yeah, I'm just going to modify, this part all works. The part where we advance forward works. So when we pop a bubble, our animation's really slow right now, but that part is working. It's the unwind part that's broken. So I'm going to leave this code. I'm going to leave the advance forward code as it is for now. That'll be fine. What you coding? I'm working on my game that is currently called TraceRacer. That's my working title. So it's just, I'll give you a little demo here. So it's just a game where, as of right now, you kind of just go and you pop these little bubbles, these little circles. I call them bubbles. You pop them kind of in the order that they appear here. So as you go, like more bubbles will pop up. Let me fix the animation. I'll change that back just so you can see that a little better here. So basically you hover your mouse over the bubble, you press the key to pop it, and you just keep going. So as bubbles pop up, it just keeps kind of changing, just new random colors. The colors are currently kind of broken. But yeah, that's basically it for right now. So my goal is to make this actually like a little competitive game. So it would be kind of like a one-on-one thing. But this new, basically, I'm working right now on kind of animating this little section here, because right now it doesn't. Right now it animates forward properly, like whenever you pop a bubble, that part is working. But the parts where when you mess up, it's supposed to go back to a certain point, and I'm trying to fix that right now. All right, let's make these animations slower again for right now. And just make sure that's good enough. Okay, that should be, yeah, so we got that little guy flying way off there into the distance. That is bad. So okay, so what I was saying before is we have our section of the code that's working. So this code for right now I'm just going to leave, because this is our, if the bubble gets popped and we move on to the next bubble, that stuff is all correct. So I don't want to modify it using our new bubble props array here. This stuff here though seems to not be correct. So I want to adjust all of these based upon the bubble props. So this loop should still be correct. We're going to loop and undo all the popped bubbles. This would be undo all the, I should say undo invisible, well, we'll just say undo popped bubbles. So, and I think this is the part that's actually, this part's actually kind of working too. But nonetheless, I will change it. So for each popped bubble, so the it count is how many bubbles we need to slide off of that have been popped, which will either be 1 or 2 or 3 in the case of the current configuration. Hi again. Hello. Let's just do this. Const b equals id plus, whoops, id plus I. Yeah, because we're sliding back to a certain bubble. So then this dot target bubbles b, because we're trying to animate the bubbles that have already been popped. So we're going to be doing the move to, the fade to, and the size to. So we're going to be moving to whatever's in our, we're going to be making these visible now. Yes. So these, in our little nice drawing here, all of our pop bubbles are going to be in this position visible, but they would all be sliding Actually, there could be a problem there. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so we've got a little bit of an issue. Well, not an issue, but our iteration count. We could iterate. Well, wait a minute, though. Will it only be 3? Let me pull up my little nice diagram from the other day. This, yes. So, whoops. There we go. Because we're showing 3 bubbles. So if you advance, so if we, let's say when you pop the 4th bubble, you advance to the next checkpoint, right? So in the worst case, you're going to be sliding back. In this case here, with a checkpoint interval of 4, we have 4 bubbles in one checkpoint. 0, 1, 2, 3. We have so you could pop 0, pop 1, pop 2. Then if you pop 3, you go to the next checkpoint. So if you pop 0, pop 1, pop 2, but then you mess up, the diff is going to be -3 because we're going back 3. So 3 bubbles had been popped, right? You pop 0, 1, and 2. Those would all be in our little invisible spot here. So we're sliding 0, 1, and 2 back on here. But in the event that maybe our checkpoint interval was 5, technically we could have a diff of -4. So like if the checkpoint interval was 5, we'd have, you could pop 0, 1, 2, 3 bubbles. You'd have to pop 4 to go to 5 as a checkpoint. But then your diff would be, if you messed up after popping bubble 3, the diff would be -4. And then we'd be sliding. Okay, so 0, 1, and 2 would have to be these 3 visible bubbles, but bubble 3 would slide down to this hidden unpopped region. So we need to like loop to put these 3 back. But then if we like keep anything after that, needs to be placed in hidden unpopped. So it's like we need to check if I don't really like checking this every time, but let's just do, so we're going to loop for it count, which would be the diff. That's just the absolute value of diff. So we're going to loop, you know, if it's -3, then we loop 3 times. So we loop 3 times if I is still 0, 1, 2. So if I would be less than, if I is less than guess we can, yeah, we can do that. If I is less than config.marathon.progress_meter.bubble count. So this would be if we're still, yeah, that's exactly what we want. So if we only want to move those in the case of, you know, we pop 0, 1, and 2, we loop to make sure that we can put, because if we're going back to 0, we can put 0, 1, and 2 in the visible slots again. But like 3 could go all the way down to the invisible slot. Yes. So we need to make this, so these ones are becoming visible. Oops. So this would be if bubbles should be visible. If popped bubbles, we'll say if popped, well, we'll say previously popped bubbles should now be visible. Okay. So now we can tap into our new bubble props, this.bubble props dot visible. I, right? Yes, because it'll be 0. Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly what we want. So this would be move to Y, and then this would be fade to A, and this would be size to R. And we know it's visible, so the alpha would be 1, but whatever. We'll just keep things consistent this way here. So now, the ones that are not right, these are the ones that would be beyond this, the visible ones. They would need to go to this hidden unpopped section now. So we could say this dot bubbles dot, this just now needs to be dot hidden. Let me just make sure I get this right. Dot, oh, it doesn't know. Hidden pop dot hidden unpopped. Okay. Yes. We are looking pretty good here. Hang on 1 second here. All right, I'm back. Sorry. Okay. So in theory, okay, this is undoing the popped bubbles. I'm going to get rid of this, because this should all be good now. And then for each currently visible bubble, okay, we need to move all of them down. Also, well, they either need to move down okay, so this loop is looping over our bubble count. So while we're less than the bubble count, so the bubble count is 3 in this example. So we're seeing we have three visible bubbles, right? We've got 1, 2, 3, and we could have 4. We could change it to 4, right? So that's kind of the thing. We need to keep this all flexible. So we're looping for those 3 visible bubbles because we need to act on whatever the visible bubbles currently are. So basically, in the case of diff being negative, then they are either sliding. Well, okay, that actually might be the problem that I have here. They are going to be sliding to whatever Man, actually, I feel like I'm going to end up getting rid of this new bubble props thing that we just created. Because now that just makes things a little more complicated. Actually, let's just keep rolling with it because I think it might actually help us. Okay, so yes, so I've just realized that I was making a mistake before. We're going to have a const visible viz index is going to equal this dot well, okay, we're looping over each currently visible bubble, and we're sliding them somewhere, right? So we've got 3 visible bubbles. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So we've got our 3 visible bubbles. And they're either going to be sliding down 1 or 2, you know, so purple could be sliding back to like this position here. So the next position, yeah, so that's what I think this viz index needs to be, would be the current it would be this dot target bubble ID. It would be B, that which would be B, plus, or no, sorry. It's just going to be I plus, because I will just be either 0, 1, or 2 for these. So our visible index will be I plus the it count here. You know what? I'm going to call this. I'm not going to call it it count. I don't like that. I'm going to call it unwind count. That makes a little more sense because this is how many we're unwinding. So viz index is going to be 1 plus the unwind count. So it's very possible the visible index is going to be pointing to a number greater than our greatest index here, which would be 2 in this case, 0, 1, and 2. So then we can do just an if viz index is less than config blah 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 bubble count. So in other words, if our viz index is one of these, it's a valid visible index, then we can kind of do this exact thing. We can do basically this same exact. Yes. This will be good. And then same thing otherwise, we are going to have to assign all of these the property, or assign whichever one's the property of the hidden unpopped. So we do hidden unpopped, and that should be what we need. So now let's give it a shot. If we undo, no. That worked. Why didn't those other two? Oh, okay, we need to do visible viz index plus I is what we need to do. Or sorry, not viz index plus I, just viz index. Yes. Viz index. I didn't modify that from before. Okay. So now we pop 1, and there we go. Nice. Oh, something with that. Why is the animation? It's like it's getting faster. What? How does that happen? What in the world? Yeah, we've got this little bubble down here. So it's good there, then it's like faster all of a sudden. Faster. And it's kind of like aliased. You probably can't really see that too well on the screen there, but it's like extra aliased. So as if it's like drawing more than once too, which kind of worries me a bit. That's something wrong is going on there. Oh, let's fix. Okay, so let's also fix. Let's fix this part here as well. I didn't comment this out. Whoops. All right, so in the case of we move forward, when we pop a bubble, target bubble ID. So for each target bubble, we're just moving up. Okay, so that should be fine. Now we need to Oh, yes. That is a problem. I put my to-do here for that exact thing. The new bubble is getting initialized twice. So that's the problem. So one of those first invisible bubbles gets initialized, it's an entity that gets a init called on it. So its event handlers get set up, which means its animations and everything, and its animations and whatever all get set up. And then it gets init. So if it goes away, then it gets init called on it again. So it reappears, but now all those event handlers have gotten called again. Animations and everything have gotten registered again, and they're trying to fire off again. So that is bad. And I even made the little to-do for myself because I knew that that was going to break stuff. So think I'm going to take a little lunch break right now. And, oops. All right, let's put this up above. All right. So take a quick break, then we'll jump back in. All right, I'm back. I think I'm going to end the stream right now, quick, and then take a little bit of a longer break, and then I will be back on streaming. So this is Dev Stream 7 Part 1. We'll start Part 2 in a little bit. So for now, we'll see you back shortly. Bye-bye.